Good morning, another live match. This time on Matchlake 9 at Heronbrook. This is the teams of four, the final round. I keep looking away because I'm looking at my tip. We've already started the match and I've started on the bomb and bread. So I'll give you a quick look. There's a rod look. Bomb and bread chucking over to the island. See that little gap over there? Can you see that little gap there? I'm just chucking short of that there. That's the peg there. Jake, give us a wave. On a flyer. On the end peg flyer. Should catch a load of fish on that peg towards the gap. Oops, panning round. Every peg's in on this bank. So, I don't know how it's going to fish, but we'll see. So there you go. Right, I'll keep you updated. Right, so it's getting on close to 2 months since I was last on this lake, so I wasn't sure of how to go about it. Now I know Jake on the next peg had been on the lake the previous day, so I chucked the bomb and bread to start with, so as I could watch what he did, to be honest, see how he fed it before I decided how I was going to feed the pole lines. And what I did notice was that he seemed to put some crushed expander in long. That's what it looked like from where I was sitting, with some maggots in it, and he did the same on his short line. So I filled up a pot with some match method mix, which I'd mixed like 50-50 with water to make it very heavy, so as it would go straight down when it entered the water, because it was like getting on for 7 feet deep out on the long lines. I plumbed up 2 lines at the same length in the same depth of water, and I intended on feeding one line with the ground bait and some maggots, and then the other line would be just maggots. So I'm just getting the pot loaded up ready for when I reel in. I spent about 4 or 5 minutes on this and it never went round, so reeled it in to feed my pole lines. You usually know pretty quickly whether you're going to catch on the bomb and bread. It's an instant method. And usually when you've got a bit more room on the legs, as in not every peg in, when it's every other peg or so, you can explore the peg a bit more, but you're a bit restricted when it's every peg in, so you can't really chuck about. So the line I chose to fish the ground bait and maggots on was to the left at 14.5 metres. And like I say, that ground bait, I've mixed it pretty wet so it goes straight down, no hanging about. And then to the right hand line I've fed, it's probably about 40, maybe 50 maggots in that pot. And then on the short line I put match method mix and maggots again, same as on the long line. The short line I fished a top kit plus a short 3, and then 4 and 5 sections. The number 3 on a Preston pole is like a number 4 on any other brand. So again, loose ground bait. I'll drop that in on the short line. Wasn't sure that we'd catch short today, but it's got to be fed. It's quite deep there. It's probably only about 5 to 6 inches shallower than the long line. It's always good to fish at the bottom of shelves as well, because fish hang around them areas anyway. Once I'd fed my lines, I went back out on the bomb and bread. There was no messing about with the bomb and bread line. That was now 21 hook length to a size 12 KKHB. And then I got a bait spike on an 1-inch hair. And on that I put 3 discs of 10mm bread. Never crushed them either, so as they pop up straight away. As soon as water hits that, it'll puff up and fill the hair. I tend to fish quite a heavy bomb when I'm fishing the bomb and bread. I've got a 30-gram one on here. I like to tighten up to the rod so as it shows all drop back bites, because a lot of your bites on bomb and bread are just drop backs. I never gave this long either, to be honest, because it just didn't feel right. Probably only gave it another 4 or 5 minutes before reeling in again. Ideally, I'd like to have chucked to my left or even to my right, but with every pegging, you just can't do it. My next move was to pick up the maggot feeder, and I planned to start on this line quite short, about 3/4 across, where it's still quite deep. And on this I fished double banded maggot. I was 16 hook length, size 16 GPMB with a microband hook hair rig, and I was loading the feeder with a tiny pinch of match method mix and probably 5 or 6 maggots. And like I say, I was chucking it on 3/4 line. And I planned to leave that for as long as it took to get a bite. Making sure the line sunk. Now I sat and waited for getting on close to 15 minutes before the tip eventually went round. And that's my first fish. The rod on the maggot feeder was the Supera SL. Absolutely adore this rod this time of year. Especially on lakes like this where it's got lots of stockies in. With a harder rod you tend to lose a few under your feet. Not with one of these. This just takes all the lunges and cushions them lovely. The reel used is a magnitude 420, and that's loaded with 6 pound sinking feeder mono. First fish was a F1 of about £2. Again loading the band up with 2 maggots. I'm not bothered whether they're dead or alive, to be honest, when they go in the microband, because they're not going anywhere either way. I do prefer to use live maggots, to be fair. When they're in the microband, they tend to stretch out anyway with the squeeze. But never come out the band though. When I say microband, it's this small Preston band. Another chuck on this same length and I never had another bite. Probably fished it for another 15-20 minutes and never had another indication. No liners or anything. The chap to my left had got 2 or 3 fish now. He was chucking a lot closer to the island, but the fish were very small. Stockies. So I just plan to work my way towards the island. See if I can catch bigger fish on the way there. Also noticed that Jace was loose feeding maggots on his long line via the catapult. So I thought, I'm going to have to follow suit here. Just in case there were some fish feeding on them shorter lines, he'd end up pinching them off me. No more bites on that line, so I peeled about 4 or 5 yards off the reel, reclipped up to go a little further towards the island. Bait's not been touched, so all I've got to do is load up the feeder. Again, put a tiny pinch of match method mixing and 5 or 6 maggots. And this cast was probably about 4 yards short of the island. Still in quite deep water there. So I gave this distance 2 casts of about 10 minutes each cast. Never had an indication on it. So I peeled a bit more line off to go a bit closer to the island. So I'm now set at about a yard short of the island. It wasn't on this line for long before the tip went round. This was cast to virtually the same spot as where I'd chucked the bomb and bread and never had an indication on, and within a few minutes on the maggot feeder I've got a carp on. Maybe it just wasn't a bomb and bread day. Just taking my time not to put too much pressure on it. Don't need to this time of year, they're not fighting too hard. Just take it nice and steady. Let the rod do its work. The chap to my left was probably on 5 or 6 fish by now, and Jake to my right was on 4, maybe 5, but both of their fish seem quite small. So if I get this carp out, I'm back up there. Still plenty of fight in them, even in this cold water. Incidentally, it was a freezing cold day. That fog barely lifted all day, and it was icy cold. I was glad I was fishing the rod to start with because my hands were absolutely freezing. You may ask yourself why I'm not wearing my gloves. I'm not a big fan of wearing gloves while I'm fishing. I only wear them when I'm desperate. Plus, when I'm fishing the rod, I can always stick my hands in my pockets. Nice carp of around £5. That puts me back in amongst them. You have to use a banding tool to be able to get 2 maggots into a small band. I'm still only putting a tiny pinch of bait in the feeder. Fish number 3 follows soon after. This one's an F1 this time. None of the bites on the feeder were a wrap round. There was just a shake on the tip or a tap tap. Hey? Third fish. Was it? How'd you manage that? The chap on the next peg's just told me he's been cracked off by a stocky under his rod. That's another reason why you need a soft rod. Little buggers. Still loose feeding the pole line. Just hope there's a few fish there when I go on it. This feels a better fish again. Another carp of around £3. This puts me on 4 fish. I think the chap to my left has got about 7 or 8, but I'm in front of him on weight. Jake to my right has got a few more fish than that, and he's had a few better F1s, so I think I'm behind him. I have a further 2 fish on the feeder before it goes really quiet, so I decide to pick up the pole and have a look on there. Starting on the ground bait line at 14.5 metres, I'm going to put 2 maggots on the hook and a pinch of maggots in the pot, and then cap it off with some Match Method mixed dark. The rig I used was a 4x14 F1 maggot with a strung gauge shotting pattern, 012 hook length and a size 16 SFLB hook, and I'll be using Duraslip 9's elastic. Somehow I cut my finger, I don't know what on, but it won't stop bleeding. Eventually Chris Sanderson, who was sitting behind Jake, went to his van and got me some insulation tape to stem the flow. First bite on the pole was off a little skimmer. Not what I was hoping for.
Oh dear.
This time I'm feeding. I'm just putting a little ball of ground baiting so as it goes down even faster, to see if that works any better, and not feeding any maggots. This one's a better fish. Maybe that's the way to go. Putting balls of ground bait in instead of putting it in loose. It's not a massive fish, but it's bigger than the skimmers and roach. Fish of just over £1. If I could keep them coming, I'll be happy. Again, making a little ball, and then 2 maggots on the hook. If you notice, I've never put any maggots in that time, and still bleeding. I'm trying to put my rig in so as it goes straight down. If you lay it in, you get a bite off a roach. I'm trying to avoid that, but it doesn't work. After that one F1 on that line, all I can seem to get bites off is little roach. Not what I want at all. Needed another option, so I got another rig out, an intercarbon 4x16, and plumbed out at 16 metres and fed just a little ball of Fin Perfect micro pellets. I've gone over it with a 4mm Pro expander and caught a fish almost immediately, but then I can't get a bite again. So I've put a little ball of ground bait in as well as the micros and fished double maggot on the hook and started catching. This is my third indication on this line, but I think this one's foul hooked. Jake's trying his best to talk it off for me because I think he's getting a bit concerned. I'm catching on the pole and he can't get a bite. I'm really taking my time with this one, as every fish is definitely going to count today. Ooh, I was a bit quick to take the sections off there.
In the tail. You're wishing that on me.
We had some great banter throughout the day, me and Jake. I've had to edit most of it out because his language was a bit fruity. He went a bit quiet towards the end though when he realised I was catching so well. I think he was really, really concerned.
It's fair looked up the bum. They all them F1s, I'm scared to pull it. Because it's just, everything's at a premium, I hate that.
Get in that net. Good stamp fish that as well. Hooked in the anal fin. I don't care. He's going in the sprout bag. Pouring a tiny pinch of micros in the pot and capping it off with a bit of match method seems to be the way to go. I've completely cut out any maggot feed now.
Oh, there's no need to be like that, is there? They're going off on me because you f***ing.
I'm rubbing the salt in the wounds now. This was definitely the right way to feed the pig. A bit of micro and capping it off with ground bait. I completely cut out any maggot feed anywhere in the peg, and this stopped me getting interrupted by any silverfish. Because this method had worked so well on the long line, I saw no reason why it wouldn't work on the short line, so I fed a few micros and a bit of ground bait on the short line as well to see if I could draw any fish to that area. Well, that settled, I went back out on the long line to see if I could catch any more. 10 minutes out there, I never had another indication, so I thought it was time to come and have a look on that short line. And I began by feeding it exactly the same as I had on the long line, a pinch of micros, and then capping it off with a bit of match method mix. We'll see how that goes. You could tell by the look on my face, I was a bit shocked when it actually did go under and I ducked an F1. Happy days. spent the last 40 minutes on this line and I caught 4 fish off it. But once Jake had seen that I was catching on the short line, he's dropped on his as well and he started catching. Now, we were close. At the end of the match, he was admitting to 18 decent fish plus stockies. I've finished the match with 18 fish total. So it was going to be close between us, but I thought Jake had pipped me. Well, I expected Jake to beat me, but we'll see when the scales come.
Can I look it up? Is the camera on? I'm going to pass the camera on then because somebody's bamboozled me. Is the camera on? You don't have to hear him every time, do you? Yeah, is the camera on? It's on. It's on, Josh. Recording? Isn't it? 43.8. Take us a picture, Mom. No, fuck that. Hey, stop! Why is fish in there? Come here, Mom. Don't be like that. Oh, it's gone down. 42.1. Respect the day, one. You know you'll be in the video, don't you? In the video? I'll just turn it back on. Oh, just watch it over. I'm going to go down and take pictures of me. Yeah, take pictures of me. What do you want? There you go. Clean it. Here I am on the MPEG Slayer. Alright. The guy's rounding off. He's just going to guys.
I've got my camera set up and I've made another shit video for YouTube later.
Right, I'm off now.
Right, I'm back at my peg, having done the weigh-in yet again. I've ended up breaking Jake's heart on peg 1. Well, no, end peg. He's at £42.1, I've ended up £43.8. So I've beat him, and that has won me the money section, which was the pegs all along this bank. I finished 4th on the lake, 3 weights better than mine on the other bank, a 65, a 63 and a, I think he had 56 pounds, something like that. He's had some great big F1s, but they've all caught big fish around there. But I'm really happy to have won the section from there. Well, finished 4th on the lake and won the section, so very happy. It's almost dark, so I'm going to get back and see how the team have done in the results. If you enjoyed watching this, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. Thanks, cheers.